Welcome to the world of science fiction, where extraordinary tales and boundless imagination come to life. Enjoy the story and don't forget to subscribe. Kos Veronis stood motionless in the center of the teeming night market of Mander, eyes closed beneath his hood, a statue in a river of chaos. The fifth planet of the Aurelian system was notorious for its markets and notorious for the dangers that lurked within them. A three-horned Zorgon merchant crashed into Kos's shoulder, spilling bioluminescent fruits across the cobbled street. "Watch it, off-worlder," the Zorgon bellowed, his cranial spikes flaring with anger. Kos didn't move, didn't even flinch. "Did you hear me, you stone-faced human?" The merchant grabbed Kos's cloak beneath the hood. Kos continued his meditation, focusing on the weight of the ancient blade strapped to his back. It pulsed gently against his spine, a reminder of its constant presence. "Kos, there's that merchant again," Ragnar's voice resonated inside Kos's head. "Want me to give him a little scare? Just a tiny vibration to make his tentacles curl?" "No," Kos thought back, maintaining his perfect stillness. "The point is control. Focus. Discipline." "Boring," Ragnar replied. "We've been standing here for 47 minutes. Your legs must be cramping by now." A group of shrieking children crowded around Kos, one of them actually climbing halfway up his leg before being yanked away by a parent. Kos's expression never changed. 3, 2, 1, Ragnar counted down. "And we're done," Kos muttered, opening his eyes just as the market's central chronometer chimed the 11th hour. The world rushed back in, the smells of fried kelp and exotic spices, the buzz of 1,000 conversations in 50 languages, the ozone tang of hovering neon signs. Kos rolled his shoulders, loosening muscles that had been locked in perfect stillness for nearly an hour. "Finally. Now can we please get something to eat? You promised me blood sap noodles." Kos was about to respond and a flash of silver caught his eye above the crowd. Not just silver, silver hair. Something more interesting just came up. Kos murmured, watching as a tall figure with violet skin vaulted over a merchant's stall, her long silver hair streaming behind her like a comet's tail. She was being pursued. 4 figures in heavy tactical armor, bearing the unmistakable blue hexagon sigil of Cosmotech Corporation. They moved with the efficient, coordinated precision that only came from extensive military training. "Those are H6 combat suits," Ragnar observed. "Latest model. Self-healing exoskeleton frameworks with integrated shield generators. Pricey. Whoever she is, she's important," Kos replied, silently watching as the violet-skinned woman darted between stalls, knocking over displays to slow her pursuers. Even from this distance, he could see her features clearly: high cheekbones, eyes the color of emeralds, full lips currently twisted in a grimace of exertion. Her combat suit was clearly expensive, form-fitting black material with iridescent purple accents, though a tear in the side revealed flesh the color of twilight. Blood, darker purple than her skin, trickled from the wound. "Are we going to help her?" Ragnar asked, a hint of eagerness in his mental voice. "We're going to watch," Kos replied, pulling his hood lower and melting into the crowd, moving parallel to the chase. For now. The woman was good. She moved with the grace of someone who had received extensive combat training. But the pursuers were better. They were hurting her, Kos realized, driving her exactly where they wanted her to go. The chase led away from the main thoroughfare, down increasingly narrow passageways. The woman turned sharply into a darkened alley. "Amateur move," Ragnar commented, as Kos silently scaled a nearby wall, gaining a vantage point on the unfolding scene. 50 credits says it's a dead end." From his perch, Kos saw the woman's shoulders slump as she reached the brick wall at the alley's end. She whirled around to face her pursuers, reaching for a weapon that wasn't there. They must have disarmed her earlier. "Elva Deander," the lead pursuer called out, his voice metallic through his helmet speaker, "you've led us on quite a chase." "Deander?" Ragnar's voice held surprise. The royal family? That's the crown princess of this entire system, Kos. Kos narrowed his eyes, studying the cornered woman more carefully. He'd heard stories about the 3 princesses of Mandar, daughters of the dying queen, heirs to the matriarchal throne that controlled the richest resource deposits in this sector of the galaxy. The chase ends here, princess, another pursuer said, drawing an energy blade that hummed with lethal intent. Cosmotech sends its regards. The princess, Elva, backed against the wall, her green eyes flashing with defiance. Cosmotech will never get control of Mandar's crystal fields. Your sisters will join you soon enough, the lead pursuer cut her off. Nothing personal, princess. Just business. Well, are we going to do something heroic or just watch? Ragnar prodded impatiently. Instead of answering, Kos dropped silently from his perch, landing in the shadows between the princess and her would-be executioners. He leaned casually against the alley wall, arms crossed over his chest. Problems? He asked lazily. All 5 people in the alley jerked in surprise. The princess's emerald eyes widened, while the lead pursuer recovered quickly, turning his weapon toward Kos. Hey, buddy, he growled, walk away if you want to keep breathing. This doesn't concern you. Kos didn't move, his face obscured by his hood. Curious thing to say to someone who's just trying to help. The princess pressed herself against the wall, her breathing ragged. You'll help me? Hope, tinged with suspicion, colored her voice. One of the pursuers laughed, the sound distorted through his helmet. 4 of us, 1 of you, and we're wearing military-grade combat suits. How exactly do you plan to help? Kos slowly pushed back his hood, revealing angular features, eyes gray as a winter storm, and a half-smile that never quite reached those eyes. A thin scar bisected his left eyebrow. By asking politely for you to leave the lady alone, he suggested with mock innocence. The 4 armored figures exchanged glances, then burst into harsh laughter. I take it that's a no. Kos sighed. Pity. He straightened from the wall, stretching his neck from side to side with audible cracks. Last chance, the leader said, activating his energy blade. The other 3 followed suit, the alley now bathed in the crimson glow of their weapons. Walk away, or die with her. Can I please come out now? Ragnar whined in Kos's mind. I've been stuck on your back for hours. You know I could kill them for me. The princess asked, her voice a mix of hope and disbelief. Kos winked at her. Me? No. With a fluid motion, he reached behind his back and drew forth what appeared to be an ancient, battered sword, the metal blackened with age, the edge seemingly dulled. But my sword, he added, might want to stretch his legs. The pursuers stared at the primitive weapon, momentarily stunned before breaking into renewed laughter. Is he seriously planning to fight us with that relic? One of them sputtered. Looks like something from a museum, another added. Kos shrugged. Funny, but you're not the first to make that mistake. Oh, please let me at them. Ragnar's excited voice filled Kos's head. These self-important bucket heads in their fancy suits. I'll show them what real power looks like. Show off. Kos murmured under his breath, then casually tossed the ancient blade into the air. The sword spun, not as a thrown weapon should, but as if it controlled its own momentum. It traced a perfect arc through the air, picking up speed as it went. For simultaneous flashes of light, and the sword returned to Kos's outstretched hand as if drawn by a magnet. Your move, Kos said with a yawn. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, with eerie synchronicity, the 4 helmeted heads of the pursuers slid from their shoulders and thudded to the ground. Their bodies remained standing for a heartbeat longer before collapsing in unison. Stars above, the princess whispered, her emerald eyes wide as moons. Not my best work, Ragnar complained. If you'd given me more room to maneuver, I could have done something truly artistic. Kos slid the blade back into its sheath, then extended a hand to the stunned princess. I believe the show's over, Your Highness. She took his hand with surprising strength, her violet skin contrasting sharply with his tanned complexion. Up close, her beauty was even more striking, high cheekbones, full lips, and those remarkable green eyes, now studying him with a mixture of awe and calculation. How did you do that? She demanded, glancing at the fallen mercenaries. That's impossible. No blade can Lucky throw. Kos interrupted with a half-smile. Right place, right time. Lucky throw. Ragnar sounded offended. I calculated 17 variables, including atmospheric density, to execute that maneuver. Kos ignored him, turning to leave the alley. Wait. Elva called out, desperation clear in her voice. Please, I need your help. Kos paused, not turning around. I don't do charity work, princess. I can pay you whatever you want. Name your price. Kos glanced back over his shoulder. Some things can't be bought. Oh, here we go with the mysterious lone warrior routine, Ragnar commented. You know you're going to help her. You always do this. Act all disinterested first, then swoop in to save the day. Shut up, Kos thought back. What was that? Elva asked, stepping closer. Nothing, Kos replied. Look, I'm not for hire. Not even for royalty. Her eyes narrowed. Then what would it take? There must be something. Kos chuckled, the sound rusty from disuse. If you were my wife, that would be different. Family obligation and all that. He meant it as a joke, a ridiculous notion to end the conversation. He was unprepared for her immediate response. Done, she said firmly. Kos blinked. What? I accept your terms, Elva said, straightening to her full height, nearly as tall as he was. If marriage is what it takes to secure your protection, then I, Elva Deander, Crown Princess of the Seven Systems, will become your wife. Did not see that coming, Ragnar laughed in Kos's mind. You can't be serious, Kos said, genuine surprise breaking through his carefully maintained facade. Elva stepped closer, close enough that he could smell her perfume, something exotic and floral, undercut with the metallic scent of blood from her wound. I am entirely serious, she said, her green eyes boring into his. Those men weren't the first sent to kill me, and they won't be the last. Cosmotech wants our crystal fields, and they'll eliminate my entire family to get them. I need protection. Not just any protection, but someone extraordinary. She gestured to the headless bodies. You qualify. This is insane, Kos muttered. You don't even know me. I know enough, she countered. I know you're the most dangerous person I've ever encountered. I know you just saved my life. And I know I'm out of options. An image flashed through Kos's mind, a memory buried deep, a hungry boy sitting alone in the wreckage of a transport hangar, a young girl with violet skin offering him a piece of bread when everyone else walked past. It couldn't be. What's your answer? Elva pressed, her voice drawing him back to the present. Will you accept, or shall I await the next assassination attempt alone? Say yes. Wagner urged. Do you have any idea how long it's been since we had a real challenge? Or a real bed? Or decent food? Kos studied the princess's face, searching for deceit and finding only determination mingled with desperation. He'd spent 15 years wandering the galaxy, taking odd jobs, avoiding attachments. The sword on his back was his only constant companion, his teacher, his conscience, his friend. If I agree, he said slowly, what exactly would this arrangement entail? Relief flooded her features. Protection. For me and my sisters, against Cosmotech and anyone else who threatens us. In return, you'll have the title of royal consort, access to all the resources of Mander, and... She hesitated, a flash of vulnerability crossing her face, whatever else is customary in such arrangements. Are we seriously considering this? Ragnar asked, excitement clear in his mental voice. We are, Kos admitted silently. Before he could respond aloud, distant shouts echoed from the market. More pursuers, likely alerted when the first team failed to report in. We need to move, Kos said, decision made. Your Highness, lead the way to somewhere safer. We can discuss the details of our arrangement there. Elva's smile was dazzling, relief and triumph and something more, primal, that sent an unexpected jolt through Kos's usually disciplined mind. Follow me, husband-to-be, she said, already moving deeper into the shadows of Mander's labyrinthine backstreets. And perhaps you'll tell me the name of the man I just agreed to marry. Kos Veronis, he replied, falling into step beside her. And Ragnar, the sword added indignantly in his mind. Don't forget to mention me. Just Kos, he repeated, ignoring the blade's protest. And I have a feeling I'm going to regret this. But as he followed the silver-haired princess through the shadows, Kos couldn't deny the stirring of something he hadn't felt in years. Purpose, perhaps. Or something more dangerous still. The royal palace of Mander loomed against the twilight sky, its crystalline spires catching the last rays of the setting sun. Kos stared at the structure with growing apprehension. He'd spent his life avoiding entanglements, political, emotional, or otherwise. Now he was walking straight into what seemed like all three at once. It's magnificent. Ragnar commented in his mind. I haven't been in a royal palace since, well, since before you were born. And how did that visit end? Kos asked silently. With 3 dead monarchs in a civil war, the sword replied cheerfully. But I'm sure this will go much better. Elva moved with renewed confidence as they neared the palace, her regal bearing returning with each step. The wounds. The royal palace of Mander loomed against the twilight sky, its crystalline spires catching the last rays of the setting sun. Kos stared at the structure with growing apprehension. He'd spent his life avoiding entanglements, political, emotional, or otherwise. Now he was walking straight into what seemed like all three at once. It's magnificent. Ragnar commented in his mind. I haven't been in a royal palace since, well, since before you were born. And how did that visit end? Kos asked silently. With 3 dead monarchs in a civil war, the sword replied cheerfully. But I'm sure this will go much better. Elva moved with renewed confidence as they neared the palace, her regal bearing returning with each step. The wound in her side seemed to have already begun to heal, thanks to advanced medical nanites woven into her combat suit. Guards in ceremonial armor, polished crystal plates that refracted the light into a dazzling rainbow, snapped to attention as they approached. Hail Princess Elva, they intoned in unison, their voices echoing in the vast courtyard. Welcome home. Open the gates, Elva commanded, her voice ringing with authority. And prepare chambers for my guest. The gates swung inward, revealing a breathtaking vista of manicured gardens, shimmering fountains, and towering crystal structures. Kos followed Elva inside, his senses overwhelmed by the sheer opulence of it all. Impressive, isn't it? Elva said, a hint of pride in her voice as she led him through the palace. Mander is known throughout the galaxy for its beauty and its wealth. And its crystal fields, Kos added, glancing at the intricate crystal formations that adorned every surface. The crystals hummed with a subtle energy, a power that he could feel resonating deep within his bones. Yes, the crystal fields, Elva said, her expression hardening. The source of our power, and the reason Cosmotech wants us dead. They walked in silence for a moment, passing through hallways lined with portraits of stern-faced queens and displays of ancient artifacts. The air was thick with history and tradition. So, Kos said finally, breaking the silence, where do we stand on this arrangement of ours? Are we announcing our engagement to the entire kingdom, or are we keeping it quiet for now? Elva stopped, turning to face him. For now, it remains a secret. My sisters. She hesitated, they can be difficult. I need to tell them myself, in my own way. Difficult how? Kos asked, already suspecting the answer. Lyra is pragmatic. She sees everything in terms of politics and strategy. She'll want to know what your intentions are, what you can offer Mander, and whether you're worth the risk. And the other sister? Naya is impulsive. She acts first and thinks later. She's fiercely protective of me and Lyra, and she won't take kindly to a stranger suddenly appearing in our lives, especially one claiming to be my future husband. Sounds like fun, Kos deadpanned. They're just concerned for my well-being, Elva said defensively. They've lost so much already. Our mother, the queen, is fading fast. She is very sick. I'll keep that in mind, Kos replied. They reached a set of ornate double doors, guarded by 2 more crystal-armored sentinels. Elva nodded to them, and they swung the doors open, revealing a lavish sitting room. 2 women were inside, both as striking as Elva, though in different ways. One, with hair as dark as midnight and eyes the color of amethyst, was pacing back and forth across the room, her brow furrowed in thought. The other, with fiery red hair and eyes like molten gold, was lounging on a silken chaise lounge, idly tossing a crystal dagger into the air and catching it. Elva, the dark-haired woman exclaimed, rushing forward to embrace her sister. Thank the stars you're safe. We heard about the attack in the market. What happened? I'm fine, Lyra, Elva said, returning the embrace. Thanks to a friend. She gestured toward Kos, who stood silently in the doorway. All eyes turned to him. The red-haired woman, Naya, stopped tossing the dagger, her golden eyes narrowing with suspicion. Lyra's amethyst eyes were more calculating, assessing him from head to toe. Who is this? Lyra asked, her voice sharp and demanding. And why is he in the royal palace? This is Kos Veronis, Elva said, taking a deep breath. He's the one who saved me in the market. Saved you? Naya scoffed, rising from the chaise lounge. I highly doubt you needed saving, Elva. You're the most skilled warrior in the 7 systems. Even the most skilled warrior can use a little help sometimes, Naya, Elva said, her voice firm. Kos intervened when I was outnumbered and outgunned. So, he's a mercenary, Lyra said, her lip curling slightly. How much did you pay him for his services? He's not a mercenary, Elva said, her cheeks flushing slightly. He did it out of the kindness of his heart. Kos almost choked on his own tongue. Kindness? Had he ever done anything out of kindness? Kindness? Naya repeated, her golden eyes blazing with skepticism. I don't believe it. Everyone has an agenda, especially in this palace. Enough, Naya, Elva said, her voice rising. Kos is my guest, and he will be treated with respect. A guest who just happens to be armed, Lyra observed, her eyes fixed on the hilt of Ragnar's sword. What kind of weapon is that? It looks ancient. It's a family heirloom, Kos said, stepping forward slightly. It served me well. I'll bet, Naya said, her hand instinctively reaching for the dagger at her hip. I'm sure it's very effective against unarmed civilians. Sisters, please, Elva pleaded, her voice laced with exasperation. Can we not do this now? I have something important to tell you. Lyra sighed, running a hand through her dark hair. Very well, Elva. What is it? Just make it quick. I have a meeting with the Crystal Guild in an hour. Elva took another deep breath, her face pale. Kos and we're going to be married. The silence that followed was deafening. Naya's hand tightened on her dagger, her knuckles turning white. Lyra stared at Elva, her amethyst eyes wide with disbelief. Married? Lyra finally said, her voice barely a whisper. You can't be serious. I am serious, Elva said, her voice firm, though her hands were trembling slightly. Kos has agreed to become my royal consort. Royal consort. Naya exploded, throwing her dagger across the room. It embedded itself in the wall, vibrating with barely contained energy. You're insane. You barely know this man. How can you possibly marry him? I have my reasons, Elva said, avoiding Naya's gaze. What reasons? Lyra demanded, her voice rising again. Are you telling me you've fallen in love with this stranger at first sight? It's not like that, Elva said, her voice cracking slightly. It's complicated. Complicated? Naya repeated, her voice dripping with sarcasm. I'll bet it is. Did he blackmail you? Is he threatening to reveal some dark secret about our family? That's enough. Kos snapped, stepping forward. I won't stand here and listen to you insult your sister and me. I have done nothing to deserve this hostility. Oh, really? Naya said, her eyes blazing with anger. Then explain why you're suddenly marrying the crown princess of Mandar. What's in it for you? I already told you, Kos said, his voice calm despite the storm raging inside him. I'm doing it to protect her. Protect her from what? Lyra asked, her voice cold and calculating. Cosmotech. We have the most advanced security systems in the galaxy. We have a crystal-powered army at our command. We don't need some outsider to protect us. Cosmotech has already tried to assassinate Elva twice in the past month, Kos said, his eyes locking with Lyra's. Your security systems aren't working. And your army is clearly not enough. Lyra's face paled slightly. She couldn't deny the truth in his words. Besides, Kos continued, I have certain skills that might be useful in dealing with Cosmotech. Skills that your army doesn't possess. Such as? Naya challenged, her arms crossed over her chest. Such as the ability to kill 4 highly trained mercenaries in the blink of an eye without making a sound, Kos said, his voice soft but deadly. The sisters exchanged glances, a flicker of unease passing between them. They knew that Kos was telling the truth. They had seen the bodies in the alley. Even if that's true, Lyra said finally, her voice regaining its composure, marriage is not the answer. There must be another way to secure your protection. There isn't, Elva said, her voice firm. I've made my decision. I'm going to marry Kos, and that's final. But, the succession, Lyra protested. What about the future of Mandar? You can't just marry a stranger and expect him to rule alongside you. He won't be ruling, Elva said, her voice hardening. He'll be my consort, nothing more. I will continue to make all the decisions. And what if you have children? Naya asked, her voice laced with concern. Will they be half-human? Will they be able to inherit the throne? Those are questions for another day, Elva said, her voice dismissive. For now, the only thing that matters is surviving. And I believe that Kos is the key to our survival. Lyra stared at Elva, her eyes filled with a mixture of anger and despair. She knew that she couldn't change her sister's mind. When Elva made a decision, she stuck to it, no matter the cost. Very well, Lyra said finally, her voice resigned. If this is what you want, then I won't stand in your way. But don't expect me to be happy about it. Naya was less willing to concede. She glared at Kos, her golden eyes filled with hatred. I don't trust you, she spat. I don't like you. And I will be watching you, every step of the way. If you hurt Elva, I will make you regret the day you were born. Kos met her gaze without flinching. I understand, he said softly. Elva stepped forward, taking Kos's hand. Thank you, she said, her eyes filled with gratitude. Both of you. I know this isn't easy. Lyra turned away, walking toward the window. Don't thank me yet, she muttered. This is just the beginning. Naya continued to glare at Kos, her hand still hovering near her dagger. I'll never accept him, she vowed. Never. You will, Elva said firmly, her voice ringing with authority. Eventually, you will. Kos squeezed Elva's hand, offering her what little comfort he could. He knew that he had just walked into a hornet's nest, a viper's pit of political intrigue and family drama. But he had made a promise to protect Elva, and he intended to keep it, no matter the cost. Well, this is going swimmingly, Ragnar commented sarcastically in his mind. Think they'll try to poison my blade at dinner? Or maybe slip some sleeping powder into your protein shake? Just be quiet, Kos thought back, his mind racing. I need to think. He had a feeling that the hardest part of this whole charade was just beginning. Winning over the Sisters of the Crystal was going to be a far greater challenge than fighting off a few Cosmotech assassins. And something told him that those assassins were the least of his problems. The biggest threat was already inside the palace, hidden behind a mask of royalty and tradition. As Elva led him away, Kos glanced back at Lyra and Naya, their faces etched with suspicion and resentment. He knew that he had made powerful enemies in the royal palace of Mandar. But he also knew that he had gained a powerful ally in the Crown Princess. And in this Game of Thrones, that was all that mattered. The echoes of the sisters' animosity lingered in the air long after Kos and Elva left the sitting room. Kos could sense the waves of distrust radiating from Lyra and Naya, even through the thick crystal walls. Don't worry about them, Elva said, sensing his unease. They'll come around eventually. Kos remained unconvinced. They seem pretty set in their ways, he observed. They are, Elva admitted. But they also love me. And they'll do whatever it takes to protect me, even if it means accepting you. I hope you're right, Kos said, his gaze sweeping over the opulent surroundings. He couldn't shake the feeling that he was walking into a trap, a carefully laid snare designed to ensnare him in a web of political intrigue. Trust me, Elva said, her hand tightening on his. I know my sisters. They're loyal, fierce, and sometimes a little bit crazy. But they're also the best friends a girl could ask for. Kos didn't respond, his mind still churning with possibilities and dangers. He had a lot to learn about the princesses of Mandar, and he had very little time to learn it. Cosmotech was still out there, lurking in the shadows, waiting for an opportunity to strike. And now, he had to contend with the internal threats as well, the simmering resentments and hidden agendas that festered within the walls of the royal palace. I think, Kos said quietly, that I'm going to need a drink. Elva smiled, a genuine, unforced smile that reached her emerald eyes. I know just the place, she said, leading him toward a hidden doorway concealed behind a tapestry. The royal cellars are said to contain some of the finest vintages in the galaxy. As they stepped through the doorway, Kos couldn't help but wonder what other secrets the royal palace of Mandar held. He had a feeling that he was only scratching the surface, and that the true depths of this complex world were far more dangerous than he could ever imagine. But he was here now, bound by a promise and a growing sense of responsibility. He would protect Elva and her sisters, even if it meant sacrificing everything. Bottoms up, I guess, Ragnar muttered in his mind. Yeah, Kos replied silently. Bottoms up. The royal cellars were a labyrinth of cool, dimly lit chambers, the air thick with the scent of aged wines and rare liquors. Crystal shelves lined the walls, holding bottles of every shape and size, their labels written in languages Kos didn't recognize. Impressive, Kos admitted, his gaze sweeping over the vast collection. My ancestors had discerning tastes, Elva said, leading him deeper into the cellars. They believed that diplomacy was best conducted over a glass of fine wine. A philosophy I can appreciate, Kos replied. They stopped in front of a particularly ornate crystal shelf, filled with bottles that glowed with an inner light. Elva reached out and selected one, its label written in ancient Mandorian script. This, she said, is crystal fire. It's made from a rare type of crystal that grows only in the deepest parts of the crystal fields. It's said to have invigorating properties. Invigorating how? Kos asked, raising an eyebrow. Elva grinned. You'll see. She uncorked the bottle, and a plume of shimmering vapor escaped into the air, filling the chamber with a faint, floral aroma. She poured 2 glasses, the liquid inside glowing with a soft, amber light. Kos took a sip. The taste was unlike anything he had ever experienced, sweet and spicy, with a subtle kick that warmed him from the inside out. He could feel his senses sharpening, his mind becoming clearer. Well? Elva asked, watching him expectantly. What do you think? I think, Kos said, that I could get used to this. Indeed, Ragnar agreed mentally. I've never felt so sparkly. They drank in silence for a few moments, the only sound a gentle hum of the crystal walls. Kos used the time to study Elva, trying to decipher the emotions hidden behind her regal facade. He saw determination, yes, and courage, but also a deep well of sadness and vulnerability. So, Kos said finally, breaking the silence, what's the next step? Do we announce our engagement to the kingdom? Or do we start planning a counterattack against Cosmotech? Elva sighed, setting down her glass. Neither, for now. First, I need to find out who's been leaking information to Cosmotech. They're always one step ahead of us. Someone inside the palace is betraying us. And you think I can help you find them? Kos asked. I hope so, Elva said, her eyes locking with his. You're an outsider. You'll see things that we've become blind to. You'll ask questions that we're afraid to ask. Sounds like a dangerous job, Kos observed. It is, Elva admitted. But it's also essential. If we don't find the traitor, Cosmotech will destroy us all. All right, Kos said, draining his glass. I'm in. Where do we start? With Lord Varos, Elva replied, her voice hardening. He's the head of the royal guard, and he's been acting suspiciously lately. He's always whispering with Cosmotech officials and always seems to be in the wrong place at the wrong time. I want you to investigate him, discreetly. Find out what he's hiding. Discreetly is not really my style, Kos admitted. Try your best, Elva said, a hint of amusement in her voice. And be careful. Varos is dangerous. He's a skilled fighter and a ruthless politician. He won't hesitate to kill anyone who gets in his way. Noted, Kos said. Anything else I should know about him? He's obsessed with power, Elva said. He craves it more than anything else in the world. He's also incredibly vain. He spends hours grooming himself every day. And he has a weakness for gambling. He often frequents the casinos in the lower city. Gambling, eh? Kos said, a smile playing on his lips. That could be useful. Just be careful, Elva repeated. Varos is not to be trifled with. I understand, Kos said. He stood up, stretching his muscles. I'll start my investigation tonight. Good, Elva said, rising to her feet as well. I have a meeting with the Crystal Guild. I'll see you later. Kos nodded, turning to leave the cellars. As he walked away, he could feel Elva's gaze on his back, a mixture of hope and anxiety. He knew that she was relying on him, placing her trust in a stranger she barely knew. And he was determined not to let her down. As Kos stepped out of the royal palace into the bustling streets of Mandar City, he felt a familiar sense of purpose settling over him. He was good at this, at sniffing out secrets and uncovering hidden agendas. It was a skill he had honed over years of wandering the galaxy, a skill that had kept him alive more than once. So, Ragnar said in his mind, where do we find this Varos character? Should we just walk up to him and ask him if he's a traitor? Subtlety, Ragnar, Kos chided. Remember? Elva asked me to be discreet. Fine, fine, Ragnar grumbled. But don't expect me to enjoy it. Kos made his way through the crowded streets, his senses alert to every detail. He scanned the faces around him, searching for any sign of danger or deceit. He listened to the conversations, trying to pick up any useful information. He soon found himself in the lower city, a sprawling district of casinos, bars, and brothels. The air was thick with the smell of cheap liquor and desperation. Neon signs flickered overhead, casting a lurid glow on the streets below. "This is more like it," Ragnar said approvingly. "Now we're talking." Kos entered a dimly lit casino, the air filled with the clatter of dice and the murmur of voices. He scanned the room, searching for Lord Varos. It didn't take him long to find him. Varos was sitting at a high-stakes sabacc table, surrounded by a group of sycophants who laughed at his jokes and flattered his ego. He was a tall, muscular man with a chiseled jaw and piercing blue eyes. He wore a tailored uniform that accentuated his physique, and his dark hair was perfectly coiffed. "Definitely vain," Kos observed. "And arrogant," Ragnar added. "I can't wait to take him down a peg." Kos approached the sabacc table, casually leaning against a nearby pillar. He watched as Varos played, his expression impassive. The Lord of the Royal Guard was good, very good. He bluffed with confidence, calculated his risks with precision, and always seemed to have the right card at the right time. After a few hands, Varos had amassed a considerable pile of credits in front of him. He grinned, raking in his winnings. "Another victory for Lord Varos," he said, his voice booming. "It seems that luck is always on my side." "Or perhaps you're just very skilled," Kos said, stepping forward. Varos turned to face him, his blue eyes narrowing. "Who are you?" he demanded. "And what do you want?" "Just an admirer," Kos said, extending his hand. "I've been watching you play. You're very impressive." Varos hesitated for a moment, then shook Kos's hand. "Thank you," he said, his voice softening slightly. "I appreciate the compliment." "Kos Veronis," Kos introduced himself. "And you are the infamous Lord Varos." "Indeed," Varos said, puffing out his chest. "And what brings you to this establishment, Kos Veronis?" "Just looking for some entertainment," Kos said, shrugging. "I heard this was the place to be." "It is," Varos said, his eyes gleaming. "Especially when I'm here." Kos chuckled. "I can see that. Perhaps I could join you for a game? I'm feeling lucky tonight." Varos studied him for a moment, his eyes assessing. "Very well," he said finally. "But be warned, I don't play for small stakes." "Neither do I," Kos said, taking a seat at the table. The game began, and Kos quickly realized that Varos was even more skilled than he had initially thought. He played with a cold, calculating precision that was unnerving. Kos, however, refused to be intimidated. He matched Varos's bets, bluffed when necessary, and played with a reckless abandon that surprised even himself. As the night wore on, the tension at the table grew thicker. The other players dropped out, leaving only Kos and Varos. The stakes grew higher and higher, until they were playing for sums that could bankrupt entire families. Kos didn't care. He was focused on Varos, trying to read his tells, to decipher the emotions hidden behind his stoic mask. He could sense the darkness within him, the hunger for power that consumed him. Finally, the decisive hand arrived. Kos and Varos each placed their final bets, pushing all their remaining credits into the center of the table. "Show your hand," Varos said, his voice barely a whisper. Kos grinned, revealing his cards. "A perfect sabacc," he said, laying them down on the table. Varos stared at the cards, his face paling. He had been beaten. "Impossible," he muttered, shaking his head. "This can't be happening." "It is," Kos said, raking in his winnings. "You lost, Varos." Varos slammed his fist on the table, his eyes blazing with fury. "You cheated," he roared. "I know you cheated." "Calm yourself, Varos," Kos said, his voice calm. "You're making a scene. I'll kill you." Varos shouted, lunging at Kos. Before Varos could reach him, Kos grabbed his wrist, twisting it behind his back. Varos cried out in pain, his face contorted with agony. "I wouldn't do that if I were you," Kos said, his voice soft but deadly. "I'm not as merciful as I look." Guards rushed forward, surrounding Kos and Varos. They drew their weapons, pointing them at Kos. "Release him," one of the guards demanded. "Or we'll open fire." Kos ignored them, tightening his grip on Varos's wrist. "I have some questions for you, Varos," he said. "And you're going to answer them." "I'll never talk to you." Varos spat. Kos leaned closer, his voice dropping to a whisper. "Oh, I think you will," he said. "Because if you don't, I'm going to break every bone in your body, one by one." Varos stared into Kos's eyes, seeing the cold, ruthless killer beneath the surface. He knew that Kos wasn't bluffing. "All right," Varos said, his voice trembling. "I'll talk. Just let me go." Kos released Varos's wrist, stepping back. The guards lowered their weapons, watching Kos warily. "Good," Kos said. "Now, let's talk about Cosmotech." Varos hesitated for a moment, then sighed. "What do you want to know?" "Everything," Kos said. "Everything about your dealings with them. Everything about their plans for Mander. Everything." Varos began to talk, his voice low and hesitant at first, then growing more confident as he revealed the truth. He spoke of secret meetings, of backroom deals, of promises of power and wealth. He spoke of Cosmotech's plan to seize control of the crystal fields, to exploit Mander's resources for their own gain. As Varos spoke, Kos felt a surge of anger rising within him. He had known that Cosmotech was dangerous, but he hadn't realized the extent of their treachery. They were willing to destroy an entire planet, to enslave its people, all for the sake of profit. "And what about Elva?" Kos asked, his voice hard. "Did Cosmotech order you to kill her?" Varos hesitated, his face paling. "Yes," he admitted. "They wanted her out of the way. They saw her as a threat to their plans." "And you were going to do it?" Kos asked, his eyes narrowing. Varos stammered. "I didn't have a choice. They would have killed me if I had refused." Kos stared at Varos, his expression unreadable. He knew that Varos was a liar, a traitor, a coward. But he also knew that he was a valuable source of information. "All right, Varos," Kos said finally. "I believe you. For now. But if I find out that you're lying to me, I will make you suffer in ways you can't even imagine." Varos nodded, his face pale with fear. "I understand," he said. "I'll tell you everything you want to know." Kos signaled to the guards. "Take him away," he said. "And make sure he doesn't escape." The guards grabbed Varos, dragging him away. Kos watched them go, his mind racing. He had uncovered a dangerous conspiracy, one that threatened the very existence of Mander. He needed to warn Elva, to tell her what he had learned. But as he turned to leave the casino, he saw a figure standing in the shadows, watching him. It was Lyra, Elva's sister. Her face was grim, her eyes filled with suspicion. "So," she said, her voice cold. "You've been busy." Kos sighed. This was going to be difficult. "What are you doing here, Lyra?" he asked. "I could ask you the same question," she replied. "I followed you. I wanted to see what you were up to." "I was investigating Varos," Kos said. "Just like Elva asked me to." "And what did you find?" Lyra asked, her eyes narrowing. Kos hesitated for a moment, then decided to tell her the truth. He told her everything, about Varos's treachery, about Cosmotech's plans, about the threat to Mander. Lyra listened in silence, her face growing paler with each word. When Kos finished, she stared at him for a long moment, her expression unreadable. "I don't believe you," she said finally. Kos sighed. "I was expecting that," he said. "You're lying," Lyra insisted. "You're trying to manipulate me, to turn me against my own people." I'm telling you the truth, Lyra, Kos said, his voice pleading. Mander is in danger. You need to believe me. I'll never believe you, Lyra said, her voice filled with hatred. You're an outsider. You don't care about Mander. You're just using my sister for your own gain. That's not true, Kos protested. Yes, it is, Lyra said. And I won't let you get away with it. I'm going to expose you for what you are. I'm going to tell Elva the truth about you. You can't do that, Kos said, his voice desperate. You'll be putting her in danger. I don't care, Lyra said, her eyes blazing with anger. I'd rather see Elva dead than see her married to you. Lyra turned and ran, disappearing into the crowd. Kos stared after her, his heart sinking. He knew that he had made a terrible mistake. He had trusted Lyra. Kos stared after Lyra, his heart sinking. He knew that he had made a terrible mistake. He had trusted Lyra, or at least, he had hoped to gain her trust, and now she was going to use his honesty against him. She would tell Elva everything, twisting his words, painting him as a villain. Well, that went south quickly, Ragnar said in his mind, his voice laced with sarcasm. I told you not to trust her. She has that stab you in the back while smiling look about her. Shut up, Ragnar, Kos thought back, his mind racing. I need to figure out what to do. He knew that he had to reach Elva before Lyra did. He had to explain his actions, to convince her that he was telling the truth. But how? Lyra would already be back at the palace, poisoning Elva's mind. He needed a way to get to Elva first, a way to bypass the palace security and get to her directly. Then, an idea struck him. The crystal fields. Elva had mentioned that she often went there to meditate, to connect with the crystals. If he could find her there, he could explain everything before Lyra had a chance to intervene. The crystal fields, huh? Ragnar said. Sounds like a romantic getaway. Maybe we should bring some crystal fire wine. Just focus, Ragnar, Kos thought back, turning and heading towards the edge of the city. I need you to guide me. You know the way to the crystal fields, don't you? Of course, I do, Ragnar replied. I know every crystal formation on this planet. It's one of the perks of being an ancient, sentient sword. Kos followed Ragnar's guidance, navigating the maze-like streets of Mander City. He moved quickly, his senses alert to any sign of pursuit. He knew that Lyra wouldn't let him go without a fight. She would likely send guards after him, or even try to stop him herself. As he left the city behind, the landscape began to change. The towering buildings and crowded streets gave way to rolling hills and shimmering crystal formations. The air grew cleaner, fresher, filled with the subtle energy of the crystals. We're getting close, Ragnar said. I can feel the crystals resonating. It's quite beautiful, actually. Kos continued to move forward, his pace quickening. He could see the crystal fields in the distance, a vast expanse of glittering spires and glowing formations. It was a breathtaking sight, a testament to the raw power and beauty of Mander. As he neared the crystal fields, he saw something that made his blood run cold. Smoke. Plumes of black smoke rising from the heart of the fields, obscuring the crystal formations. What the hell is that? Kos muttered. That's not good, Ragnar said, his voice filled with concern. That's a disruption of the crystal matrix. Something is attacking the fields. Kos broke into a run, his heart pounding in his chest. He knew that Elva was likely in the crystal fields. If someone was attacking them, she would be in grave danger. As he reached the edge of the fields, he saw the attackers. Cosmotech. Dozens of heavily armed soldiers, clad in black combat armor, were systematically destroying the crystal formations. They were using energy weapons to shatter the crystals, releasing a cloud of dark energy that choked the air. In the center of the chaos, he saw Elva. She was fighting bravely, her crystal sword flashing as she defended the fields against the Cosmotech soldiers. But she was outnumbered, outgunned, and clearly struggling. "We need to help her," Kos said, drawing Ragnar from its sheath. "I thought you'd never ask," Ragnar replied, his blade humming with anticipation. Kos charged into the fray, his sword a blur of motion as he cut down the Cosmotech soldiers. He moved with a speed and ferocity that surprised even himself. He was fueled by a burning rage, a desire to protect Elva and to avenge the destruction of the crystal fields. The Cosmotech soldiers turned their attention to Kos, firing their energy weapons at him. But he was too fast, too agile. He dodged their attacks, deflecting the energy blasts with his sword. He moved like a whirlwind, cutting down soldier after soldier, leaving a trail of destruction in his wake. Elva saw Kos fighting his way towards her, and her face lit up with relief. "Kos," she shouted. "What are you doing here?" "Protecting you," Kos replied, deflecting another energy blast. "And stopping these bastards from destroying your home." Together, Kos and Elva fought back against the Cosmotech soldiers. They were a formidable team, their skills complementing each other perfectly. Elva's grace and precision were matched by Kos's raw power and ferocity. They moved as one, cutting down the enemy with ruthless efficiency. As they fought, Kos noticed something strange about the Cosmotech soldiers. They seemed different. They were more aggressive, more ruthless than the mercenaries he had encountered in the market. They were also more robotic. Their movements were stiff, their faces expressionless. "These aren't normal soldiers," Kos said to Elva, deflecting an energy blast. "They're augmented. Enhanced. Cosmotech's latest technology," Elva replied, slicing through a soldier's armor. "They've been experimenting with cybernetic enhancements. These soldiers are more machine than man." The realization made Kos even angrier. Cosmotech was not just trying to steal Mander's resources, they were also corrupting its people, turning them into mindless drones. He had to stop them. Together, Kos and Elva pushed back the Cosmotech soldiers, driving them towards the edge of the crystal fields. But as they neared the perimeter, they saw a new threat. A massive warship descended from the sky, its shadow falling over the crystal formations. "That's the Cosmotech Dominator," Elva said, her voice filled with dread. "Their flagship. They're bringing in reinforcements." The warship opened fire, unleashing a barrage of energy blasts that shattered the remaining crystal formations. Kos and Elva dove for cover, narrowly avoiding the explosions. "We can't fight that thing," Kos said, his voice grim. "We need to find a way to disable it." "There's a control nexus deep within the crystal fields," Elva replied. "It's a central point of the crystal matrix. If we can reach it, we might be able to disrupt the warship's energy source." "Then let's go," Kos said, grabbing Elva's hand. Together, they raced towards the heart of the crystal fields, dodging the energy blasts from the warship. The landscape around them was being destroyed, the crystal formations shattered into dust. But they pressed on, determined to reach the control nexus. As they neared their destination, they were ambushed by a group of Cosmotech soldiers. The soldiers surrounded them, cutting off their escape. "You're not going any further," the lead soldier said, his voice distorted by a cybernetic implant. "Cosmotech will claim this world. You can't stop us." "We'll see about that," Kos said, drawing Ragnar. He charged into the soldiers, his sword a blur of motion. But these soldiers were different. They were stronger, faster, more resilient than the ones he had fought before. They were augmented with cybernetic enhancements, making them nearly unstoppable. Kos fought with all his might, but he was being overwhelmed. The soldiers pressed their advantage, forcing him back. He could feel his strength waning, his energy fading. Suddenly, Elva stepped forward, her crystal sword glowing with an intense light. She raised her sword, channeling the energy of the crystal fields. A wave of pure energy erupted from the sword, striking the Cosmotech soldiers. The soldiers cried out in pain as the energy surged through their bodies, disrupting their cybernetic implants. They collapsed to the ground, writhing in agony. "Go, Kos!" Elva shouted. "I'll hold them off." Kos hesitated for a moment, then nodded. He knew that Elva was risking her life, but he had to trust her. He turned and ran towards the control nexus, leaving Elva to face the Cosmotech soldiers alone. As he reached the control nexus, he saw that it was a massive crystal formation, pulsating with energy. He approached the crystal, placing his hand on its surface. "What do I do now?" Kos asked Ragnar. "Connect with the crystal," Ragnar replied. "Feel its energy. Let it guide you." Kos closed his eyes, focusing on the crystal. He could feel its energy flowing through him, filling him with power. He could see the crystal matrix, the intricate network of energy that connected all the crystals on Mander. He reached out with his mind, trying to disrupt the connection between the crystal matrix and the Cosmotech dominator. It was like trying to sever a steel cable with a butter knife. The connection was too strong, too resilient. Then, he remembered something Elva had said. The crystals resonated. If he could find the right frequency, he could disrupt the connection. He began to experiment, sending out different frequencies of energy, trying to find the one that would break the connection. He tried everything he could think of, but nothing worked. Just when he was about to give up, he heard a voice in his mind. A soft, gentle voice, filled with wisdom and compassion. "You must reach into the crystal heart," the voice said. "Find the source of its power. Only then can you sever the connection." Kos didn't know who the voice belonged to, but he trusted it. He reached deeper into the crystal, searching for its heart. He could feel the energy building, the power surging. Finally, he found it. The crystal heart. A small, glowing sphere in the center of the crystal formation. He reached out and touched it. A blinding flash of light filled his vision. He felt a surge of energy so powerful that it threatened to tear him apart. He screamed, his body convulsing. Then, just as suddenly, it stopped. The light faded, the energy subsided. He opened his eyes, gasping for air. He looked up at the Cosmotech dominator. The warship was faltering, its energy shields flickering. It began to descend, crashing into the crystal fields with a deafening roar. Kos had done it. He had severed the connection, disabling the warship. Cosmotech's attack had been thwarted. He turned and ran back towards Elva, eager to see if she was all right. As he approached, he saw her standing amidst the wreckage, her crystal sword still glowing. She was surrounded by the fallen Cosmotech soldiers. "Elva!" Kos shouted, running towards her. "Are you all right?" Elva turned to face him, a sad smile on her face. "I'm fine, Kos," she said. "But I'm afraid there's something you need to know." Kos reached her side, his heart pounding in his chest. "What is it?" he asked. Elva took a deep breath, her eyes filled with tears. "Lyra," she said. "She betrayed us." Kos stared at her, stunned. "What? What are you talking about?" "She was working with Cosmotech all along," Elva said, her voice trembling. "She was the one who gave them the information they needed to attack the crystal fields." Kos couldn't believe it. Lyra, the pragmatic, calculating sister, had betrayed her own family, her own planet. But why? Why would she do that? Kos asked, his voice filled with disbelief. "She wants to rule Mander," Elva replied. "She believes that she is the only one who can save our planet. She thinks that Cosmotech can help her achieve her goals." Kos shook his head, unable to comprehend the depth of Lyra's treachery. He had been so wrong about her. He had underestimated her ambition, her ruthlessness. "Where is she now?" Kos asked, his voice hardening. "She fled," Elva said. "She knew that she would be punished if she was caught." She escaped on a Cosmotech transport ship. Kos clenched his fists, his anger. Kos clenched his fists, his anger simmering beneath the surface. Lyra's betrayal was a devastating blow, not just to Elva, but to the entire planet. Her actions had jeopardized everything they had fought for. "We'll deal with Lyra later," Kos said, his voice hard. "Right now, we need to focus on securing Mander. Cosmotech will be back. We need to be ready for them. What do you suggest?" Elva asked, her voice weary. "We need to consolidate our forces," Kos said. "We need to rally the Crystal Guild, the Royal Guard, and any other allies we can find. We need to prepare for a full-scale invasion." "It won't be easy," Elva said. "Many of the guilds are corrupt. Some even have ties to Cosmotech." "Then we'll weed them out," Kos said, his eyes narrowing. "We'll expose their treachery and bring them to justice. We'll show them that Mander is not for sale." "You're talking about a civil war," Elva said, her voice filled with dread. "It may come to that," Kos replied. "But it's a risk we have to take. We can't allow Cosmotech to divide us and conquer us." Elva nodded, her face pale but resolute. "You're right," she said. "We have no choice. We'll fight. We'll defend our home." Together, Kos and Elva began to organize the defenses of Mander. They sent out messengers to the various guilds, summoning them to the royal palace for an emergency council. They rallied the royal guard, preparing them for battle. They worked day and night, fueled by adrenaline and a fierce determination to protect their planet. As they worked, Kos couldn't help but think about Lyra. He couldn't understand how she could have betrayed her own sister, her own people. He knew that she was ambitious, but he had never imagined that she would be capable of such treachery. "Don't let her get to you," Ragnar said in his mind. "She's not worth it. Focus on the task at hand. Protect Elva." "I know," Kos thought back. "But I can't help but feel responsible. I should have seen this coming. I should have known that she was hiding something." "You can't blame yourself," Ragnar said. "You did what you thought was right. You trusted her. That's not a weakness, Kos. That's a strength." "Maybe," Kos replied. "But it's a strength that almost got us all killed." The days that followed were filled with tension and uncertainty. The Council of Guilds was a tense affair, with accusations and recriminations flying in all directions. Kos and Elva struggled to maintain order, to convince the guilds to put aside their differences and unite against Cosmotech. Finally, after days of debate, they reached an agreement. The guilds would unite under Elva's leadership, forming a unified defense force to protect Mander. They would also launch an investigation into Cosmotech's activities on the planet, exposing their corruption and bringing their collaborators to justice. With the guilds united, Kos and Elva turned their attention to the Royal Guard. They reorganized the Guard, strengthening its defenses and preparing it for a full-scale invasion. They also began to train new recruits, bolstering their ranks with volunteers from the guilds. As the preparations for war continued, Kos and Elva grew closer. They spent hours together, strategizing, planning, and supporting each other through the stress and uncertainty. They shared their hopes and fears, their dreams and their regrets. They found solace in each other's company, a bond forming between them that transcended their initial arrangement. The day of Elva's coronation arrived, a bittersweet moment amidst the chaos of war. The ceremony was held in the Grand Hall of the Royal Palace, a vast chamber adorned with crystal formations that shimmered and glowed. The hall was filled with dignitaries, guild representatives, and members of the Royal Guard, all gathered to witness the crowning of their new queen. Elva stood before the assembled crowd, her face pale but resolute. She wore a simple crystal gown, her silver hair cascading down her back. She looked every inch the queen, her regal bearing commanding respect and admiration. The High Priestess stepped forward, holding the crystal crown, a symbol of Mander's power and authority. She placed the crown on Elva's head, and a wave of energy surged through the hall, filling everyone with a sense of hope and renewal. "Hail Queen Elva!" the crowd shouted in unison, their voices echoing through the hall. Elva raised her hand, silencing the crowd. "My people," she said, her voice ringing with emotion. "We stand at a crossroads. Our planet is threatened by a ruthless enemy, an enemy who seeks to steal our resources and enslave our people. But we will not surrender. We will not yield. We will fight for our freedom, for our home, for our future. We will fight," the crowd roared in response. "I pledge to you," Elva continued, "that I will lead you with courage, with wisdom, and with compassion. I will defend our planet with every fiber of my being. I will never betray your trust." "Long live Queen Elva!" the crowd shouted, their voices filled with renewed determination. As the coronation ceremony drew to a close, Kos stood at Elva's side, his hand resting protectively on her back. He knew that the challenges ahead would be immense, but he was confident that they could overcome them together. But even as he felt a surge of hope, a shadow of doubt lingered in his mind. He knew that Lyra was still out there, plotting her revenge. And he knew that Cosmotech would not give up easily. The celebration that followed the coronation was subdued, a quiet acknowledgement of the challenges that lay ahead. As the evening wore on, Kos found himself alone with Elva in the royal gardens, a peaceful oasis amidst the chaos of war. "Thank you, Kos," Elva said, turning to face him. "For everything. For saving my life, for uniting the guilds, for standing by my side." "It was my honor," Kos replied, taking her hand. "I know this isn't what you signed up for," Elva said, her voice soft. "You came here to protect me, not to lead a planet into war." "I'm where I need to be," Kos said, squeezing her hand. "I wouldn't have it any other way." "But what about after the war?" Elva asked. "What happens then? Will you stay with me? Will you become my king?" Kos hesitated, his heart aching. He knew that Elva deserved a king, someone who could rule alongside her, someone who could provide her with the love and support she needed. But he wasn't that person. He was a warrior, a wanderer, a man who was destined to roam the galaxy alone. "Elva," he said, his voice filled with regret, "you deserve someone better than me. Someone who can give you everything you need. Someone who can be your king." "I don't want anyone else," Elva said, her eyes filled with tears. "I want you, Kos. I love you." Kos's heart broke. He loved Elva too, but he knew that he couldn't give her what she wanted. He couldn't tie himself down to a throne, to a planet, to a life that wasn't meant for him. "I can't, Elva," he said, his voice trembling. "I'm not a king. I'm not a ruler. I'm just a warrior." "Then be my warrior," Elva pleaded. "Stay with me. Protect me. Be my consort, my friend, my lover." Kos looked into her eyes, seeing the pain and the longing.